Hello everyone, welcome to our third webinar in this series. Today we're going to be hearing all about how brands can make their packaging more accessible using QR codes powered by GS1. And it's going to be a panel discussion today. There will be an opportunity for you to ask questions at the end. So if something springs to mind as we're talking, then just pop it in the chat and we'll try our best to cover that for you once we get to the questions towards the end of the session. And because we've got a bit of interactivity, we just like to share our competition law caution. I don't think we're going to fall foul of any of this today, but please do bear it in mind. And if you have any concerns, again, just drop them into the chat and we'll address those. So just start by some introductions. I'm Camilla, I'm from GS1 UK. I lead our programme, which is all about transitioning UK retail from barcodes as you know them today to QR codes, which do exactly the same thing, but a lot more as well. And we're going to talk to some of that in a minute. We've also got Kasia Little with us. She's from Bayer, as you can probably tell from the massive products behind her. Great props today, thanks Kasia. She's a digital experience manager, so she's going to be talking about Bayer's implementation of QR codes on pack. And then we've got Darren, and Darren is a product specialist from one of our solution partners, Zappa, and he's going to talk to you about a bit about the technical solution behind this and how that's supporting accessibility. So delighted to have them with us today. And I'm just going to start, before we go any further, by talking about the programme, just in case anyone isn't aware, if you haven't been on the other webinars, but I will do it very briefly because we can go into this in a lot more detail in other sessions, and we're happy to follow up with you if you haven't heard about it yet and talk to you in more detail. So just to recap for anyone who's completely new, you should be familiar with the barcode that's on the left there. It's actually been used to identify products in retail for over 50 years now. Which is a very long time, and it's been like extremely reliable for all these years, but it does have a significant limitation, and that is that it only can contain one piece of data, and that is the item number that references that product. And what we know is that as consumers and as an industry, our data needs are evolving, and we need to start making a transition to QR codes. And the reason being is that they can hold a lot more data in them. Change has already begun. You can see it says 2024 then, which is when I'm going to say, you know, we started to get quite a few products appearing in market with those new QR codes on. We're actually aiming for a date of 2027, which is when all retailers should be able to scan QR codes at point of sale alongside the barcode. So that's an ambition date, it's not a guarantee, but we do believe that the majority of retailers will be able to scan them at this point. And just to quickly top line what the difference is, so the barcode on the left is the one you're familiar with. It can hold up to 25 characters and it goes beep at the till, as you know. The QR code on the right is a bit different to a normal QR code that you might just be using for marketing. It can hold up to 4,000 characters. It can link to lots of different sources of information on the internet. It can be dynamically updated, but it can also hold offline data, and that includes things like the GTIN, the batch number, expiry date, country of origin. There's all sorts of different data that you can embed in that barcode that will make the transferring of information much more efficient between different parties. And it also goes beep at the till. So that is all I'm going to say on it for today, because actually today is about focusing on one particular use of these barcodes, and that's accessibility. And so I'm going to start by handing over to Darren to talk to you a bit about why accessibility is important.
All right, so thank you, Camilla. So yeah, I'm Darren, and I guess to start off with, I guess a regular sort of shopping experience would be someone walking into a store, locating their products, picking up their products, I guess, and heading to the checkout, and then getting on with your day. And that was my, I guess, experience up until about the end of 2023 when I lost all of my sight. And instantly the world became a much more challenging place, effectively. And for the 1.2 billion people around the world that suffer from sight loss, what you see on the screen is exactly their experience. So I guess, as you can imagine, that experience, finding a product within that environment, locating that product, finding that product, discovering the product is virtually impossible to do independently. So that's why us at Zappa created Zap Vision and the accessible QR code. So we developed the accessible QR code alongside brands and alongside the low vision community to make products more accessible. But we wanted to come up with a solution that was scalable, cost effective to implement, as well as useful for the blind, quick, reliable, and also available as well. So an accessible QR code is just a standard QR code or GS1 digital link with a little dot dot dash element that you can see on the, hopefully you can see, on the bottom right hand corner of that QR code. So it's just a standard QR code with a little appendage that makes it accessible. So how does it make it accessible? So a normal QR code can be read from roughly around 30 centimeters away at standard size. An AQR code or an accessible QR code can be read from about 1.2 meters away. So it's roughly browsing distance from the shelf itself. So if I'm standing in front of the shelf and I'm scanning for products, etc., it will pick up that QR code or the AQR code, tell me what that product is, what category it's in, and then it will guide me in towards that product audibly. So through voiceover on my phone, it will tell me the distance I am. And then once I'm slightly closer in, it'll tell me all of the vital information that I need to make a choice. So information such as weights, allergen information, ingredients, how to use it, how to open that product, etc., which is all vital for me to be able to choose independently what I wanted from the supermarket effectively. And we didn't want to, and the other part of the research, we didn't want to create a dual use experience either. So the GS1 digital link works works as a GS1 digital link. The small appendage around it is just a small addition to that link so that you can make it a little bit more accessible and blind people can find and discover the products. We're available on Be My Eyes, Seeing AI and Zap Vision, and Envision. And those are the apps that are trusted and most used by the blind and low vision. And the reason we did that was to make it available to everyone where they are currently. So we didn't want people switching around apps, and we didn't want people to, because we've usually either got a cane, we either usually got a dog in one hand, a phone in the other hand, a shopping basket in the other. So it can all become a very sort of fragmented user experience for us. So yeah, I mean, effectively, that's what the solution is. And what I would ask for you to consider, and for, you know, if you're considering switching to a GS1 digital link, that if you make a small appendage to that link, you can change the lives of millions of people that have no experience of a shopping environment or are afraid or anxious of visiting that shopping environment because it's a wild space, quite frankly. Just that small change can help democratize products and let them become more accessible to the 1.2 billion people that absolutely need it. And yeah, that's the AQR.
Thanks, Darren, and really appreciate you bringing that to life for us and bringing to life some of the challenges for us as well. So we're now going to pass to Kasia, who has taken up that challenge from Darren to make products more accessible. So let's pass to you.
Thank you, Camilla. Thank you, Darren. Yeah, I mean, adopting GS1 accessible QR codes was really a no-brainer for us. And we've been on this journey for the last couple of years. Actually, our journey started, unrelated to GS1 and the evolution from the line barcode. It started with a desire to be more connected with our consumers, to kind of add additional value to them through digital experiences beyond just the hardware that we typically sell within the self-care space. But actually, as we kind of learned more and more about, how the QR code was developing and what these opportunities were with GS1, we realized actually the world of opportunities is huge, and really we need to leap on it. And that's really when we also learnt about Zappa's accessible QR code integration with the GS1 QR codes as well. So yeah, I mean, it was a no-brainer, as I say, and really tied in beautifully with our own company mission, which is all about sort of health for all, and making sure that our products are accessible as much as they can be to people with various needs. So that was one of the reasons that we chose to come and implement the QR codes. As I touched on already, we also really wanted to kind of add additional value through these digital experiences. And actually what we've found is in a couple of different use cases across the business that enriching the consumer experience with these additional added value experiences can actually double purchase intent. And that's certainly something that we've consistently seen across our products. And I think it's really important to think about, this in the context of the consumer shopper journey. And when you're designing these experiences, think about, what that could look like from an in-store environment, as Darren's already touched on, but also what value can be offered beyond, the purchase, and perhaps when the product is at home. I know we've talked a lot about finding the products on shelf in store, but one other really interesting and common use case is people being able to find the products within their own cupboards, and knowing what the difference is between one medicine versus another medicine, or another, vitamin, and be able to choose that like with confidence within the home environment, as well as maybe provide vitamins or medicines to their own children as well, or other members of the family. So that felt really, like an additional use case that was really valuable for consumers. The other benefit that we saw through implementing GS1 accessible QR codes is with reducing our packaging and being able to do a lot more with less. Anyone else who is in the industry, no doubt, is experiencing a similar challenge with sustainability, needing to reduce packaging, and but still be able to provide the same information that we've always needed to provide to our consumers, but now also more, because there are new regulations coming in, like the digital product passport, that are requiring a lot more transparency about where the products have come from, what they're made from, and so on. So the QR code essentially allows us to streamline a lot of that information into a digital, or really actually a hybrid, a phygital solution, if you like. And lastly, and probably not the least actually, because this is really the return on investment, if you like. But the first party scan data that you can get from consumers is like no other. There is no other data like it, essentially. If you think about it, this is a very unique opportunity to connect with people who have physically held your product in their hand, and potentially purchased it. And when it comes to the marketeers out there that are running personalized or precision marketing campaigns, that's a really valuable source of kind of audience segmentation, and can really drive up the uplifts in return on investment through marketing activations. When we've activated first-party data, we've seen examples of up to 30% increases in ROI. So, this is a really valuable opportunity from a business perspective as well. Over to you, Camilla.
Brilliant. Thanks, Kasia. Thanks for taking us through that. So, we are now going to move to a panel discussion, and I'm going to take 2 seconds just to get rid of the screen because I think it's better if we can see everyone's faces. So let me just get this. So, Kasia, I think you kind of touched on this already, but can you just tell me a bit more about why accessibility is so important to Bayer?
Yeah, absolutely. It is our company mission, essentially, health for all, hunger for none. And I think it's just such a hugely important thing to be able to deliver for consumers, particularly in the self-care space. You know, we want to make sure that the self-care is available to anyone, regardless of their socioeconomic status or you know, their needs, individual needs. And so it's also a really critical part of our sustainability agenda, making sure that we're not omitting anyone and we are really facilitating access to health products, not just, you know, from the point of view of purchasing, but also usage. And I think we've got a long way to go on that front. And there's a lot that we can learn from, you know, each other in the space. But it's certainly kind of a step forward to being a lot more inclusive. Yeah.
That's all the touchy-feely stuff. But there's a commercial benefit as well, right? Of accessing this whole additional group of consumers. Or is that not something that's kind of factored in to your thinking?
No, absolutely. I think if you think about the fact that we've got, you know, about 2 million, I think, people within the UK are experiencing sight loss or living with sight loss. You know, that's about 3% of the population. You know, for any kind of you know, savvy business person, that 3% is not worth losing, is it? But you know, yes, that is a lot less fluffy than, I guess, as you said,
Sorry.
the kind of mission. But yes, I mean, in practical terms, it's a huge, you know, business opportunity as well, and one, you know, you have to really consider how many other groups of people are being omitted potentially.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and I think a lot of the challenge, and there's some organisations that will orientate themselves right, but based on doing the right thing and doing the right thing for consumers, but then there are others that, you know, everything comes down to cold hard cash, and I think it's kind of good to show that there is that argument too, and that it's not just about doing the right thing. There's also financial benefit in there for organisations who do this. Cool. So, Darren, on that note, what should brands be thinking about if they're looking to make their packaging more accessible to consumers?
Yeah, and just first to elaborate on that point, I think you're wholly right in terms of additional market segment, because I've been doing a few community groups as well, and I think asking the question around whether you know, if something was accessible to you, would you purchase it more, or would you have more brand affinity? And the answer was absolutely yes, right? So I guess if brands are ahead of the curve, they can capitalize on that market segment and earn brand loyalty at the same time, because you've taken it seriously um, and you've been in there early enough to make your product a point of difference. So yeah, but what does I mean, what can you think about when making your products more accessible? Well, I think it can start from anywhere, quite frankly. You know, there are lots of ways to do it. So, for example, making sure that your products have the right font sizes on them, are eligible. You know, you can fit an AQR on there, but placement's important, for example. So, if you place an AQR code on the bottom of a tin, it's going to be really hard for a person that is using that scanning technology to find it. You can add a tactile element to your packaging as well, which kind of gives you a quick and easy implementation. If you're just pulling it out the fridge and don't have your phone, you can understand what it is by even having a few dots or something like that on the top of a milk cap. So there are loads of places that you can go, but I think the best thing is to make sure you start. And the point about the right contrast and the right font size on packaging just doesn't affect doesn't it's vital for people that who have low vision, but it's also useful for people for the millions and billions of other people that have some sort of short-sightedness, long-sightedness, and with that aging population, etc., that that challenge is going to become more prevalent in the future as well. So just considering those small changes and just doing them one at a time will affect a huge amount of people's lives, I think.
Yeah, and absolutely that point around the size of the writing on packaging. I think there's, everyone knows that there's a load of stuff that we have to put on the packaging for regulatory reasons. No one's checking whether we can actually read that information, because some of it's crammed on so small that it's really difficult to access, even if my site's pretty good, but like I'll be squinting, and you hear of people taking photos on their phone and zooming in, and it's like, well, we can make this so much easier for people. And also different languages, right? Because if if the packaging's all written in Japanese, I've got no chance, and actually being able to scan a code and see it in my own language could be really helpful as well. So there's a lot of different opportunities, I think, around making that information more accessible for people.
Absolutely. I was in Japan once and wanted to buy some moisturizer, and obviously all the packaging was in Japanese. This is before I lost my sight. And ended up buying soap instead, and walked around with soap all over my face for the whole day. So
Oh, that must
it hurt.
very harsh on your skin. So let's talk specifically then. I've got a few questions popping up in the chat already about how everyone's kind of excited. How do we actually make this happen? So can you talk about how you support Bayer, Darren, and what solutions Apple actually offer and how it works?
Yeah, I mean, the AQR is what we primarily offer. So, like I said, it's a a dual use link. So it can be appended to a GS1 digital link and just goes around the outside. So we will support with any sort of collateral that's needed to do any sort of advocacy for the blind. I'm more than happy to come in as well and advocate to the decision makers or the higher ups. We also provide. I think we started with Cassia with a trial run on one of the product lines. So we provided the support to create the AQR, fill in the information on that AQR in an accessible format through our CMS. And then post that, once we started to roll things out a little bit more seriously, we provided all of the onboarding to Cassia and her team to be comfortable with the actual CMS itself, so that they're able to be self-sufficient in that respect. But we weren't sort of lost either. So we do then provide the support if necessary, any help that's needed. Plus, if there are any new features that the team think will be useful in terms of scaling and making their lives easier, then we consider those and we try to implement those within that CMS as well. So yeah, that's and yeah, we'll do any cross-checking that's necessary as well to help ensure that the information's in there is accessible, and also the QR size and the implementation of that QR size is correct as well for the distance scanning. So
yeah, and that's the key, isn't it? Is having that information in a format that is accessible to people, rather than just a kind of standard web page, which isn't always the most accessible, and particularly for those screen readers and that type of technology. Great. So Kasia, let's talk then. Darren says it's easy, sort of. Well, let's talk about implementation and what were the initial steps you took? Who needed to be involved to make this happen from an organisation perspective? And talk us through that bit.
Yeah, I think this project is a really interesting one because it kind of, I think, marks the advent of a whole new way of working, because things just cannot be siloed when you're implementing accessible QR codes on packaging. And that's because really it impacts the supply chain team, it impacts obviously the marketing team, you know, the business development and sustainability teams as well. So we really had to kind of I suppose figure out what the full scope was of the opportunities and pull in those different teams, and kind of make them aware of what was happening and how it could benefit them, and kind of divide and conquer, if you like. But I think at the beginning, it was very much a kind of digital marketing led initiative, purely because, you know, it's such a new way of developing product packaging. And you know, and in a way, I think sometimes with something that's like innovative like this, you kind of need just anyone to take the first step forward, really. And so at the moment, that's, yeah, largely led by the digital marketing team, but as I say, with a huge amount of support and involvement from lots of other functions. So I think the tip would be to definitely, you know, collaborate. I mean, this sounds like just such an obvious thing that we always talk about in business, but really, like, you know, get the teams together and understand what the different needs are. And in terms of our journey, so yes, we started it within the digital marketing team, obviously worked very closely with the brand teams. And I'd say, you know, some of the results that we've seen across, you know, the scan rates, both, you know, by people who are using assistive technologies, and also by those who aren't, who are using, you know, the camera to scan the QR codes. You know, we've seen really strong results that have exceeded the industry benchmarks. And I attribute a lot of that down to the thinking that went into the value added experience that's offered as part of the QR code, and that's communicated through the call to action. So yeah, really kind of consider, you know, the specific consumer needs for your particular like products, and think about how you can add value, and where are those pain points, where are those things that you can delight them even more, and address some of those.
Great. And what would you say have been your biggest challenges, Kasia, in implementing?
I think, you know, because this is such a huge change and people are quite accustomed to using QR codes across, you know, media and you know, other areas, and just being able to kind of generate them themselves online, for, you know, it's kind of needing to explain to people that, hang on a minute, not every QR code is made equal, and actually this needs to be a GS1 powered QR code, and it needs to be accessible, and there are certain kind of processes that need to be put in place to kind of to generate that. So the change management element is definitely a little bit of a challenge, particularly when you're working in a big organization. But actually, where quite quickly what we found is that, you know, once you kind of understand what the different kind of stakeholder needs are, and what they need to know to understand the value of this opportunity, it's quite easy to kind of get that snowball effect. And now we've kind of reached this point of, you know, people reaching out to us in the UK team and wanting to take this forward in other markets. So, you know, just be persistent, and yeah, keep talking about it. You will need to be repetitive. But that is, you know, that, to be honest, that's a bit of marketing as well, isn't it? You need to build those memory structures and help people understand something new.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's change at the end of the day, and that requires all the normal change processes that you have to go through, including repeating yourself a lot, as I know well. So talk to me about, I guess, the highlights, the results. What things do you want to shout about in terms of the successes from this so far?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think we weren't you know, we didn't really have a baseline necessarily internally for how this was going to go for us. And it was, as I say, very much it started as a pilot. But I think thanks to the fact that we did take a really considered approach to designing the experiences and the placement, particularly on Canna School of the accessible QR code and the call to action, we've seen our scan rates exceed industry benchmarks. So the industry benchmark for a front of pack AQR is 1.1%, and on Canna School we've seen a 3.3% scan rate. On Barocca Mind, which I've got here and it's behind me, by the way, we actually found a 36% scan rate, which we're pretty blown away by. So yeah, but I think it really comes down to the kind of the communication on the pack and the call to action and the experience behind it. And perhaps, you know, the most important of all is that in the Canna School example, well, actually on Barocca as well, people who have scanned using an assistive technology have made up 3%, 2 to 3% of all scans. And actually that's quite a representative number when you think about the fact that 3% of the UK population is living with low vision or is blind. So yeah, we're really kind of pleased to have been able to kind of tap into that community and make our products, you know, findable, whether at home or in store, and hopefully usable. So.
Yeah, there's some amazing stats in there. I think people have been scribbling those down ready to make their business cases back to their business as well. We've got lots of questions coming through for you in the chat, Kasia, so I'm going to come back to those. I'm just going to finish with one last question for Darren before we come back to the chat and then ask some of those, but give you a few minutes to get yourself ready on those ones. But Darren, like, just what is the potential for this technology to impact the lives of consumers?
I mean, obviously, we've gone past the proof of concept portion right now, you know, we're on 5.5 billion packs around the world, which is a really great step. But I think that you know, we are scalability and scaling that across as many products as possible makes the actual sort of technology more useful for people that really need it. And so I think that with you know but that's not where I guess we kind of stop in that respect, because computer vision technology itself, getting on packs, are first and vitally the most important thing, so that people can use those products, etc. But we also look at other ways to improve the customer experience as well as the blind and low vision experience. So one of the other challenges was actually getting to the shelf itself and navigating indoor spaces. So we're sort of adapting the computer vision technology or a similar technology to enable wayfinding within indoor spaces. So as soon as I enter the shop, I can say, can I get to the cereal aisle, and then browse for cereal goods? And sorry, can I get to the cereal aisle? And it'll take you on a sort of a turn-by-turn, step-by-step method towards that. And then once you're at the shelf, you can then scan for the AQR code, and then you can find the checkout independently, or the toilets, or anything like that, etc. So, and I think that those use cases, like I sort of mentioned earlier, in terms of accessibility being vital for some, but useful for everyone, there are loads more sort of commercial applications that could help anyone in a wheelchair find a step-free access to that product, or even someone that's a little lost finding their way to the toilets or finding their way to the exit and that sort of thing. So I think the applications are sort of wide and varying, and we're continuing, I guess, to innovate on the initial sort of computer vision technology and make it more useful for everyone. And there's opportunities there with AI, sorry, and also with robotics as well, which you know, we're working with a company who can help with that within store too. So there's both commercial value, there's value to customers, and then there's also the vital value for helping people with sight loss find products and be more independent. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah,
Okay.
loads in there. Thanks,
Yeah.
Aaron. And yeah, I think ultimately it's that ability to be able to live independently that will be so crucial for people.
Yeah, and I think Kasia touched on it as well in terms of, yeah, it doesn't, the experience doesn't stop at the shelves either. Sort of getting home is a challenge, being at home is a challenge, and trying to cook a tin of soup and not cook a tin of tomatoes is important as well. I managed to cook a pack of pistachio nuts instead of pasta the other day because I didn't know what it was. So yeah, it's just that level of independence, that level of confidence, and helping people feel feel a little bit more like one of those challenges is ticked off the list. So.
Yeah, and you know, those are the things you just don't think about until you're in that situation, right? You don't like think about what that feels like at home when you're trying to make those choices, and that kind of I totally get how you did the pistachio pasta thing, because
I only noticed it until after it was cooked, so I was quite annoyed. So, but
did you
I had to do it all over again.
Well, I'm sort of intrigued as to what happened, but we'll go back to that. There's quite a lot of questions. So I'm gonna start with one about data, Kasia, because we did talk about first party data, and I know this one can trigger some thoughts with people. So it says here, and it's from David, what data are you collecting from a scan? How is this used? Presumably it's anonymous, so could you just talk about the data and how that works?
Yes, absolutely. It's anonymous. It's comparable really to the data that you would collect through cookies on your website. So whenever we send anyone through to our landing page on our website, the platform that we work with, Digimark, is able to track, obviously, that there's been one scan. If you implement a script, and that obviously needs to be kind of reflected in your privacy policy, you can also track returning users. But yeah, otherwise the main data, first party data that we're using and able to build custom lookalike audiences with is the website data. But because we've made those landing pages closed to Google, they are only accessible via the QR code. We know that the people that are landing there are people who have specifically scanned our QR codes. And so, like I said earlier, I think that's a really unique opportunity when you're looking at kind of building out audiences in your media targeting, because yeah, I mean, you could just use other pages from your website, but you wouldn't have the same signal as you do from knowing that someone's scanned your product. So yes, anonymized, not doing anything illegal, promise.
Okay, good. And then another one, which is probably quite quick, which is around the packaging reductions. How did it say packaging? Just clarify that for people.
Yeah. So we've got two examples on Barocca. If you've ever bought a Barocca before, you might know that it comes in a paper carton, and we were actually able to remove the paper carton from our 15 packs, and the information, whilst it's obviously in very small letters, as you pointed out, Camilla, still on the tube, the majority of the kind of useful information is also available by scanning the QR code. On Canischool, which is another one of our products, it's a cosmetic, we had a patient information leaflet inside, and that is now a digital patient information leaflet. So with cosmetics, you don't necessarily need to have them anyway, but that is available online now.
Great, thank you. And then I've got a couple of people very interested in supply chain, and any insights you can share from challenges you faced with supply chain, making the move, how long it took, what else we got? Yeah, just any learnings from the supply chain side would be really helpful for people.
I think we've kind of tried to keep this transition as simple as possible. So as and when we've got either products that are going to have some kind of packaging change anyway, or there's a new product coming in, that's when we're implementing the accessible QR codes, and we're implementing them alongside the barcodes. And so it still contains the EAN or GTIN, and it's essentially, yeah, I mean, a replica of the information. And so there hasn't been really a huge amount of difficulty on that front. I know that there was a question around kind of variable data, like the expiry date. Maybe we'll move onto that in a second. But that bit is fairly straightforward, really. I think one challenge that I have to admit that we've had, and I think this is helpful for you guys to know, is that sometimes when you know, we've worked with the packaging agencies and we've sent them the file for the accessible QR code, there have been times when they've actually implemented the wrong QR code on the wrong SKU. So something that's, you know, really important to remember is that it's not just like old QR codes where you can use anyone across anything. They are SKU specific. And so that has taken a little bit of, you know, kind of explaining to some of the agencies that we've worked with. I think they're, you know, clear now. They also understand, you know, the specifications around the size and how much kind of breathing room you need to give to the codes. And also, I guess what we've needed to do is just embed well, I mean, we always had a barcode checking layer within the packaging process. So now there is a QR code checking step in the process as well, but that's alongside what we were doing already anyway. So yeah, so that's I'd say the main challenge. But at the moment we are just using the EAN and GTIN, so it's pretty straightforward, as I said. The other thing is that you are, because of that approach, we are implementing the AQR codes on the packaging PDFs, so they don't, you know, change. There's no inline printing at the moment. So that's been fairly straightforward.
Great, thank you. There's a technical question here, Darren. I'm not sure whether it's for you or for me, so I'll ask it and then I can answer from a standards perspective if need be. But it says, what are the symbol sizes recommended for quiet zone and the accessible bars?
I will have to refer on that one. I can definitely get back to you on the question. So there is a certain amount of white space that needs to go around between the QR code and the accessible portion. So, but the exact details I'll have to refer to my technical team. But they can definitely answer that question as well.
Yeah,
I guess Cassie, you know, right? But
you might know. Yeah.
My audio decided that it would connect to my AirPods all on its own. I didn't touch anything, so I actually missed the question. I'm so sorry.
Oh, don't worry. It was a technical question about symbol sizes and quiet zone and the accessible bars. So I know the bit from a standards perspective, which is that generally we're looking at 1.3 to 1.5 mil, 1.5 centimeters square for the QR code, but it depends a bit on the amount of data you're putting in, because there's some really specific detail around the size of the little modules within there. So my recommendation is we have the standards on our website. You can look at that. It also talks about the quiet zone, which is observed by the Zap Vision additional code. So they kind of leave the space to make sure it will read nicely at point of sale. But all of that detail from a standards perspective is available via our website. But Kasia, I don't know if you've got any specific learnings from implementing Zap Vision around the sizing or any of that you'd like to share.
Just that you know, the sizing is really important, because there is a minimum size that makes the code readable, and that's obviously, you know, the whole point is that it can be read by, you know, consumers and supply chain. So just reiterate how important that bit is. But actually, I think in the long term, if you're kind of thinking about, you know, actually you're going to end up having multiple codes on the pack, that is going to get streamlined. So actually you're netting out that you're saving space, because you're only going to have one code, and actually you're able to streamline that quite a bit.
Great, thank you. And we are almost at time. Let me just see if I can squeeze in one more. Sophie just put the sizing guidance in the chat. Thank you, Sophie, for doing that, sharing this exact link to where to find it. There was one on here and I've lost it, which is about adoption of AQR over QR. Now, I think that one's quite difficult to answer, but I just think, Darren, if you could talk about maybe some of the other people you're working with or kind of what you're seeing from an adoption perspective, that would be really good.
Yeah, I mean, adoption is yeah, like you said, is important, and so we're working now with Bayer and Cassia, Unilever, Diageo, Nestle, Mondelez. There's a couple more on there which are a little smaller, but like I said, yeah, we're on about 5.5 billion packs, but I'm quite aware that there's more than 500 billion packs around the world. I'm not sure what the number is, but like I said, sort of scaling that across each of those sort of conglomerate brands is our next step, and then also actually also finding other use cases for the AQR as well outside of the CPG space, i.e. Within museums, within airports, and within metro stations and things like that. So the same technology can be used in other spaces outside of the QR. So I guess the story is that we've got on 5.5 billion packs, but there's still a long way to go, and we want to scale that as quickly as possible so that it becomes more useful for everyone.
Brilliant. Thank you, Darren. Thank you, Kasia. Brilliant. I've had people saying thank you in the chat as well. Really brilliant session. Hopefully shared a lot of insights with people to take away, and hopefully they'll all want to get in contact with you. So you can find the details for Zappa via our website. You can just Google them. You can find them on LinkedIn. You can certainly come and find me on LinkedIn and Kasia as well. And we have an email address, qr@gs1uk.org, if you'd like to just send us more questions. We'll be sending out a recording after this and some follow-ups if we've missed any of the questions in the chat. There were quite a few, so apologies for that. But thank you so much for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day.